There's a particularly repulsive addition to my collection is this nasty little collection of Bible stories for children. It's very similar to the kind of books my parents gave me in the early days. Makes no effort to even hint at unbelief or controversy or the contradictions in the Bible. And with the very word Bible, as I say, basically, as I've not said yet actually, the Bible, the very word means the book, as if it's one continuous novel, the book, the only book that you should actually have to read. But it's really an anthology. It's a compendium of short stories. There's actually about 66 books in the Bible, mostly more in the Old Testament than there are in the New Testament, and of course we've got the Apocrypha in this edition as well. And some of the stories follow on from one another, and some of them retell the story given in earlier books. Some of them stand alone and independent too. And there's some very readable poetic sections in the Bible, and there's lots of action, there's war, there's plenty of smiting, floods, fires, murders, political power play, and a surprising amount of sex. Some of it's bordering on pornography. And a lot of it's also mind-numbingly tedious material. There's the long lists of laws, especially when you go into Deuteronomy and Leviticus and Numbers, endless genealogies, plenty of repetition. If you actually submitted this as a fantasy novel today, and it wouldn't really work in any other genre than fantasy, because you've got talking snakes, basically talking donkeys, gods, angels, dragons, demons. It would actually be, it would be seen as a fantasy novel. If you send this to the publisher who gave you Tolkien or George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones series, it would just get rejected. They'd just say, well, sorry, but this is virtually unpublishable, isn't it? There's narration points of view changing, sometimes in mid-chapter. There's loads of contradictions. They come thick and fast, sometimes in the same chapter, sometimes in the same verse. And a lot of it's quite sexist and racist. It's frightfully homophobic, and it seems to actually be in favour of slavery. Even Jesus doesn't deviate from this position, and it carries some incredibly sloppy writing. As for the Gospels, well, most publishers would say, well, there's 4 of them here, they all tell exactly the same story, which one are we having? There's no way they would publish all 4. If anything, they'd see 3 of them as a plagiarism of the other one, and going with whichever one they actually went with first. Because some of them leave some bits out that the others have put, and some put bits of their own in. I mean, John's Gospel kind of takes a different angle than the other 3, but they are essentially all telling exactly the same story. Modern publishers would not publish 4 versions of exactly the same text in that way. Basically, it would just never. The Bible just would not see print today. And so much history, science, sheer common sense observation is rejected. Not for the Bible overall, but for the basis of the opening 11 chapters in the first presented story. If you actually look at what actually happens in Genesis, which is, it's not even the first book of the Bible to have actually been written. It actually came a lot later. I think the book of Job is actually the earliest actual work in the Bible. And so basically what you've actually got is, basically the book of Genesis is, I'm going to actually look at the book of Genesis because it is where it all starts off. But basically, if you actually look at what creationists actually base everything on, their whole rejection of everything, it's based on the first 11 chapters of Genesis. There's 50 chapters in Genesis. If you take the Bible as a whole, they're interested in that much of it. That portion I'm actually holding between my fingers there is, the whole rest of it is irrelevant almost to them, basically, besides the impact of that much material. Because that's the bit that contains the bits from the creation itself, through Adam and Eve, through Cain and Abel, and the flood in Noah's Ark, and the Tower of Babel, which is where basically we supposedly lost the ability to all speak the same language. All of that is crammed into that much space. And I mean, really, it just reads like a synopsis of a story. I mean, there's a whole lot of plots there that really would basically ruin things. So I'm going to start with those first three words, in the beginning. It's a classic fairy tale opener. I mean, so it's not a bad opening. If you're going to start a story, you should always start at the beginning, work your way to the end, and then stop. I think it's Lewis Carroll said something on those lines in one of the Alice books. And it was right up there with Once Upon a Time, and even a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Though, basically, as far as the Bible seems to be concerned, we've only got one solar system, and that's ours, with us very much at the centre of it. The problem with this beginning is that it isn't really the beginning. Because the beginning's really where God was thinking of the idea of creating a universe, going, what should I do? Should I create a universe? Nah. Maybe I should. What sort of universe should it be anyway? Can't be bothered. Oh, I think I'll do it anyway. He must have gone through that sort of a process. And so basically, was he creating? Did he actually think it through before, or did he just do it? Did he just get on with it? Basically, so to me, the creationists will actually criticise people who have religious belief, who into science, saying, well, you don't know what happened before the Big Bang, do you? It's like, well, no, scientists are free to freely admit that they don't know, there are things they don't know, that there are areas of our knowledge that have gaps in, and they try to put God into those gaps. And one of the big ones that we'll try to say is, you don't know what happened before the Big Bang theory, do you? Before the Big Bang itself. And well, we're trying to actually break through that. I mean, Lawrence Krauss is doing some very interesting stuff, arguing that the idea that it is actually possible to generate something from nothing. He's written some very interesting material on that in his books. And basically, the creationists stop it in the beginning, as though that is the beginning. Surely God must have gone through a whole sort of a thought process before he created their universe, and yet that's never even mentioned. It's never even considered. What did he do it for? What was the purpose of creating the universe? And why did he only put one populated world in the solar system? And we now know that the other planets that we've seen are not likely to support life. They're just barren lumps of rock or gas, and they've got virtually uninhabitable atmospheres, and they're extremely molten lead, or they're big gas giants like Jupiter and Saturn, and they've got pure nitrogen or pure helium or poisonous cyanide gas atmospheres that would just kill you basically pretty much the moment you set foot on the planet. Certainly if you took any breathing apparatus or space suits off, you'd be dead on those worlds. You just never going to exist on them. So I mean, what's all those planets for? I mean, why are they even there? Why not populate them all? Why not? I mean, actually, if I was creating the universe, I'd have various life forms going on all of them. I mean, watching lumps of empty rock flapping about all over the place, it just strikes me as a bit pointless. And so was the creation for his own amusement? Was he trying to learn something? I mean, was there something that God didn't know that he needed to experiment with? Was he or she or it or they bored with being such an infinite power? Was God lonely? Was he lonely without some sort of toy to play with or some sort of experiment to conduct? I mean, the universe it must have been there for eons, millennia, like thousands of millions of years, before he actually created the universe, because it was infinite before God was able to actually do all this. I mean, what was he doing all that other time? And I mean, no wonder. It's like, as we'll see in a few, and what was his plan for the universe before it went wrong? I mean, it's kind of leaping forward a bit, and spoiler alerts. Adam and Eve will mess up the creation, basically in a few chapters' time, basically when they eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge. So, what was God's idea and plan for it and for us? If we hadn't actually listened to that talking snake serpent entity thing, would there have been some developments as to how Eden and its life forms came to behave, or was it just going to carry on simply unchanged as things went from day 6 of the creation. And so basically there he is, millennia and whole infinity of being on his own. We know one of the cruelest punishments and tortures for prisoners is solitary confinement, because we're essentially social animals. That's why I have my flying spaghetti monster friend there to look after me and keep me sane. And basically it's we are social animals. What state of mind was God in to suddenly need to create a universe? How much thought did he put into it beforehand? What ideas did he reject? Flying giraffes? Raining custard? Making the whole thing invisible? Was he restricted by the laws of physics, or did he have to create those too? Could God have made the entire universe and all the planets out of plastic? Could he have made 2 + 2 = 654? Did he actually make any other universes before or after ours? Did he change his mind and stop breaking some of them up and start again? And why did it have to take 6 days? With his power, couldn't he have done it in 6 seconds or instantly? Genesis doesn't go anywhere near any of those kind of questions, and yet those are the kind of questions that we should be asking now. And it's clearly not prepared for those things. It was good enough for the people who were written for in its time, but basically the fact that it doesn't actually analyse or ask those kind of questions that we might want answers to means that the book, the Bible, is inadequate to do the job that it sets out to do. It's supposed to be there as the we need to know about everything, but there's too many unanswered questions like those. So it looks as if God didn't exactly incorporate a backup plan right there in the beginning. Why not? Did he create the universe on the lines of some sort of written or mental blueprint? Did he do a lot of drafts on paper first, with working models for things to assemble to see whether things had worked properly? Was it like an Airfix kit where like you get a model Spitfire and put it all together, but you miss a few bits out or don't follow the instructions properly? And no, basically we just see the book of Genesis shows him just get straight down to the 6-day construction work, not the conception of the idea or any of the preparation stages involved, which just does the job straight away and takes him 6 days to get on with it. So the book of Genesis is quite central to the beliefs of creationists and those who take the Bible literally. And so the first 11 chapters or so basically are all there. We complete basically, so we've got all within that space. We're going to have the creation, the fall, the first merger, the flood, cosmology, physics, astronomy, geology, Darwin, evolution theory, paleontology, chemistry, and a great deal of common sense, just rejected in favour of those words that are going to follow on from in the beginning. Among supporters of such claims as we actually see in the book of Genesis are Donald Trump and his Vice President Mike Pence, who's a creationist. And so much scientific truth is rejected in favour of this very small, narrow handful of poetic mythology. So we really need to read those words extremely carefully, whether we believe them or not, because they are a big importance in our life. I mean, there are people who still want those words teaching as though they're facts in our schools. So, but I will be following on with more essays about what follows on from in the beginning in Genesis. So, but for now, that's just to concentrate on those 3 words in the beginning is what I've actually used for this opening piece. It's going to take quite a while to get through the entire Bible, because let's face it, if you actually take the entire anthology, it's quite a big book. I'm going to get a lot of essays out of this. I hope that basically you will stick with me for many of them, or that you'll dip into some of the other work at least. So I'd like to thank you for listening to me, for listening to me read this. Please do follow me, please do subscribe to my page, like the page, basically use that little button that says like, and don't ignore the one that says don't like, dislike. Well, thank you.